we're on the Future Fund, right?
all right.
And Peter Costello has been overlooked for the appointment. Let's hear now from people. Speaking of people trying to be funny, Stephen Conroy and Peter Costello.
I'm not surprised Peter Costello put his name forward. I mean, he put his name forward regularly to John Howard, and John Howard said, look, thanks, Peter, but, you know, cool your heels. If it came to a choice, as I said, between having my money being managed by David Gonski or Peter Costello, I know who I'd pick every time, and it's David Gonski.
Foolish and juvenile. And, you know, there's certain things that I'll cop in public life, but I won't cop that. The Future Fund was something that I conceived, I legislated it, and I put every dollar of capital into it. Every dollar. No other treasurer, no finance minister, nobody has put a dollar of capital into this fund except for me.
And 14 million Australian
taxpayers. A few taxpayers chipped in too.
Through him.
OK, was that wise to go on television? And the point, he went on television, he says, because he wanted to argue against the process, but he was the person overlooked, and clearly it was going to be seen in that light.
I think it was unwise. I mean, I think Costello is absolutely right that the process was a schmozzle, that it's a really bad look to have Gonski sound out the board. He didn't make a formal recommendation, but he did pass on the views to the board, and and at that point it was not at all clear that he was himself a candidate, and then he was appointed. Bad look, clearly. But I think it was a mistake for Costello to go on and argue so forcefully about the process, because he's still a guardian of the board and he's still in the room managing $73 billion of, as we say, actually our money, taxpayers' money. And he, in that interview, as you pointed out in your talk with Penny Wong, suggested that Gonski should have excused himself, shouldn't have accepted the chairmanship. Now that leads to quite a difficult situation on that board, you'd have to think.
Well, you'd have to think that it leads to Peter Costello quite seriously, at least considering resigning from the board, because he's, in one sense, declared that he doesn't have any confidence in Gonski. And also, look, I agree with you. It was a shambles.
Well, you said the chairman should not be chairman because of the role that he played.
Exactly. So how can he sit there?
But he also said he wasn't going to resign from the board.
Well, I'm saying he should seriously consider it.
Well, he said he won't.
Because of the position he put himself in.
And more than that, because you can see that the strength of Nick Minchin's argument about ex-politicians. It wasn't so long ago that Peter Costello wrote, if we keep going the way we're going, then in 3 or 4 years we could have a European-style economy. Now, doesn't that go to the very issue of where you direct your investments in Australia? You've got $70 billion to play with. You can see the problems that exist there. And why wouldn't he see that if he wants to be a political commentator, he can't do both?
He can't do both. Look, can I just say from the outset that I think Costello could have done that job on his ear. That's not to say that he should have got it. And, you know, Nick Minchin did make a very good point. When he and Costello actually set up the fund, one of their prime objectives was to keep it away from politicians. And from politicians at the time, they actually meant the National Party. They didn't want, people raiding it to spend it on their pet projects. So they were very careful to see that it was removed from politics. So there was no way that he was going to be appointed to that position, but he should have been told that from the outset. It should have been made clear to him. It should have been made clear to him from the outset. I mean, what was the point, as Barry was asking Penny, of going around and asking the board who they wanted?
Because you have, well, this is part of the schmozzle, I guess, but as I understand it, Gonski was asked to conduct a non-binding indicative plebiscite of the board, many of whom thought that the best
they could in fact
would be themselves.
Funny you ask.
What about me?
And look, the board was split and having its own problems long before this issue became public, but it's well and truly public now, and I think in going public...
And Gonski said that most of them wanted Costello. He went out publicly after the event and said that most of them wanted Costello.
Yes, but it's a non-binding plebiscite. It's not up to them, it's up to the government.
OK, so why ask in the first place?
I think
you're going to make the decision.
Some of them didn't want Peter Costello at any price.
2 or 3 of them on the board
but
thought...
according to Gonski, the majority wanted Costello.
2 or 3 people on the board thought that they should get the job themselves, put their own name forward. More people than that. Most people wanted Costello, but he wasn't a unanimous choice. And Gonski relayed that information back to the government. Now, I'm not defending the process. I think the process was badly handled, but that's not a situation where the whole board gives a ringing endorsement to Costello. And the other point to make is that this process sort of was going off the rails well before Gonski started asking the board, and there was a campaign, clearly a campaign in the media, pre-briefing people about how Costello would be a great choice and, you know, how he should really...
that?
I have no idea.
Okay.
In the end, whether the problem was the process and not the appointment, though, Tony Abbott is sticking very firmly to the view that they got the appointment wrong. Here he is.
I can think of no better person than Peter Costello to manage taxpayers' money. Peter Costello is the world champion at good and sound and frugal and prudent management of taxpayers' money. Of course, he was the right person for this job.
We appointed the best person for the job. Now, I don't know what case the Leader of the Opposition is bringing into this parliament. If he's asking me to appoint someone other than the best person for the job because they're a member of the Liberal Party, then I won't do it, Mr Speaker. We appointed the best person for the job.
Eventually. All right.